On Saturday, thousands of Israelis gathered in Tel Aviv for a powerful demonstration, demanding that the government secure a deal to release hostages taken by Hamas during its brutal attack on southern Israel. The rally was a response to the horrifying events that unfolded when Hamas militants launched a surprise assault, crossing into Israeli territory and carrying out a deadly rampage across several communities. The attack resulted in the tragic loss of over 1,200 Israeli lives and the abduction of more than 250 people, many of whom were civilians. The demonstrators, representing a cross-section of Israeli society, gathered in the heart of Tel Aviv, a city that has become a focal point for the broader national outcry. The protest was marked by strong emotional pleas and calls for the Israeli government to take swift action to negotiate the release of those being held in Gaza. Many of the signs carried by the protesters displayed stark messages, urging the authorities to prioritize the lives of the hostages. One of the most poignant messages read, "How much blood will be spilled?" underscoring the deep anguish felt by families and communities affected by the attack. This tragic escalation of violence began when Hamas militants breached the border and carried out a coordinated attack on multiple Israeli towns and villages in the southern part of the country. The initial assault was swift and devastating, with Israeli security forces initially caught off guard by the scale and ferocity of the attack. As the fighting raged on, militants took hostages, seizing individuals from homes, workplaces, and public spaces, and transporting them back to Gaza. The number of hostages quickly became a central point of focus for Israeli authorities and the public. The emotional toll on families and the country as a whole has been immense, with the families of the kidnapped individuals holding out hope for their safe return. Some hostages were children, elderly individuals, and others with no direct connection to the conflict, further intensifying the sense of national tragedy. The Israeli government, led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, has faced increasing pressure from the public, advocacy groups, and political leaders to take action on the hostage situation. While military operations have been ongoing in Gaza as part of Israel's response to the attacks, the question of how to handle the hostages and negotiate their release has become an urgent concern. This is compounded by the fact that Hamas has threatened to harm the hostages unless certain demands are met, leaving Israel in a difficult and morally complex position. The protesters in Tel Aviv have voiced their frustration not only with the violence of the attack but also with the ongoing uncertainty surrounding the fate of the hostages. The rally served as a collective expression of fear, anger, and grief, as families of the victims and concerned citizens gathered to show solidarity with those whose loved ones are still being held in Gaza. Many of the demonstrators also called for diplomatic efforts, urging the Israeli government to engage in talks with mediators or other international actors who could help broker a deal for the hostages' release. In addition to the emotional messages, there were calls for unity within Israeli society. Despite the profound divisions within the country on political and security matters, the rally underscored that the abduction of civilians and the loss of innocent lives transcends partisan differences. The sight of thousands of people coming together in Tel Aviv, holding candles, waving flags, and chanting for the hostages' release, was a powerful visual of the collective grief and hope that has gripped the nation. Internationally, the situation has also garnered significant attention. Leaders from around the world have expressed their condemnation of the violence perpetrated by Hamas and their support for Israel's right to defend itself. However, many countries have also called for the protection of civilians and the swift release of hostages. The international community, including the United Nations, has been urging for humanitarian corridors to be established to allow for the safe passage of civilians and for talks to begin on the potential release of hostages. As the conflict continues to unfold, it remains unclear what the future holds for the hostages still in Gaza. While Israel has vowed to take military action against Hamas and its infrastructure, the question of how to secure the release of the captives without exacerbating the situation remains a difficult balancing act. The public's demand for a resolution is growing louder, and the Tel Aviv rally served as a poignant reminder of the human cost of the conflict and the urgent need for a peaceful resolution that prioritizes the safety and well-being of innocent civilians. The situation in Israel and Gaza continues to evolve rapidly, and as the world watches, the hope remains that a diplomatic solution can be found to end the violence and bring the hostages home safely. For now, the Israeli public remains steadfast in its demand for action, hoping that their leaders will find a way to navigate the complex terrain of international diplomacy, military strategy, and human compassion to secure the return of those still held in captivity.